Hi.
Hi,
Good to see
Steve.
you.
Pleasure to finally meet you, man. We haven't had the pleasure to talk to you on the show. We've had Mark on recently, Pete a few times, but
Right.
great
Oh,
to have you on.
great to be on.
I've met you once before, Steve, but you wouldn't remember.
Ring my,
Uh,
remind me.
Cruise to the Edge. Cruise to
Oh,
the Edge.
right. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And also at the 2015 Marillion weekend in Wolverhampton.
Oh, right. Oh,
Yeah. So actually, Nick is in South Africa. I'm over in the U.S. and
okay.
so we're fully international. And you are over in London.
In Buckinghamshire. Yeah, north of London, northwest of London, about 60 miles.
Nice. Great. Well, look, we're really excited to talk about the new record, An Hour Before It's Dark, comes out on March 4th. Had a chance to listen to it a few times. Fantastic record.
Thank you.
A little bit different than Fear. I want to talk about that a little bit and a bunch of other things. The first thing I want to touch on is the long delay, right? So I was looking at the history of the band and the time difference between albums coming out, and it's typically been about 2-3 years. This is really, I think, your longest break. So what was the
Well,
cause of that?
a 2 year pandemic will slow things down, to say the least.
Yeah, indeed.
And when you release an album, you tend to tour it, and then we have the Marillion weekends around the world every 2 years, which takes about 6 months of the year, in 3 months for rehearsal, and probably around about 3 months for the performances in the different countries. And then we did the Friends from the Orchestra album with the string players. So we recorded that and we toured that. And we just kind of got to the end of that, the end of 2019, and we made a start on writing what would become this album when everything went to hell. So
Yeah, exactly. Uh, well, so were you in the process of maybe working on the album and it would have been out sooner if not for
oh,
COVID or
yeah, definitely. I mean, there was several months when we couldn't work together at all. There was a few months when I wasn't working with the band because I was working at home and shielding. So it cost us at least 6 months, if not more. But then again, this album could only have been written and recorded during a pandemic. So it is very much a product of its time at this moment in history, really. So in terms of the themes and I suppose the contrast between maybe some of the bleakness of some of the lyrics, but the kind of uplifting aspect to a lot of the music as well. It's all kind of part and parcel of us all living through uh, the pandemic, really.
yeah.
Yeah, H was on record saying that he didn't really want to write about the pandemic, but I guess as the lyrics came out of him, it became a necessity, I suppose.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, when you're living through something like that, it has to come out in your work. We're going to be releasing a trailer for the EPK for the album. I think later on tonight or maybe tomorrow, and he talks about that, about the not really wanting to write about the pandemic, but then you don't have no choice because it's like what you're living through, really. The same with the whole climate change crisis. The things that you're experiencing and you're subject to, and has to come out somehow.
Yeah.
Do you ever advise H as to his lyrics? What's the process when it comes to lyric writing?
Well, the thing is, when Steve first joined the band, we were working with John Helmer a lot. He'd written a lot of the lyrics that finished up on Season's End, and various lyrics over subsequent albums. But really, for quite a long time, Steve's been the only lyricist, and we won't do a song if it's a lyrical content that we weren't comfortable with. It wouldn't evolve into a Marillion song. It would be something on his solo album. But Steve has a very balanced worldview and is very perceptive and is very good at summarizing the feelings that maybe a lot of people would have in this situation. and I think he's done a brilliant job. I mean, the response to Murder Machines, which was released today, and the video has been outstanding. You know, we had, I think Lucy had a message from someone who worked in the healthcare and got COVID in the early days and very nearly died, and gave it to their partner, and you know, so totally relating to the words and the sentiments that he's expressed in that song.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you guys are always able to do with your albums, I want to go back to Fear a little bit, which was also written about a time about dark politics and all the gloom of that period. And that album was a really big success for you guys commercially, critically.
Yeah.
You know, does the success of an album or the direction of a previous album like that influence this one and how you want to go with it?
It doesn't influence its direction. What it did do was influence our ambition for it, in terms of, you know, we're all getting older. We're all in our 60s, some of us in our mid-60s, and we're not going to make that many more records in our career. So we thought it was crucial that whatever we did, we made it as good as possible. And yeah, Fear was in a way the yardstick by which we had to measure it. So, well, we thought if these songs sound good enough to have been on the Fear album, then we know we're in the right area. So that was kind of how we measured it.
Yeah. You mentioned something before about how the pandemic delayed you guys by months, and actually it didn't occur to me, but you guys have a history of writing through jamming a lot, right? That's how you come up with a lot of the ideas. So whereas some bands may have been able to just use the time to write at home and send files, I imagine for you guys it was more critical. No, we have to wait until we're in the room because that's the process. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't always written by jamming, but really for the last 15 years or so, probably it's the primary way that we would construct the songs, just because it stops us arguing. But I mean, there's just something very special when the five of us are together. I mean, they did some work for a month or two without me, but they weren't really very happy with how it was coming together, because I think there's something that only happens when all five of us are there. Like, I tend to throw in lots of ideas one after the other. If I'm kind of feeling it, I'll come up with loads of little melodies and arpeggios and little kind of chimey melodic moments, which I think can really help lift some of the moments in the songs. And I think, you know, there was that real feeling of when all five of us could get back together again, that yeah, this is what it's about. This is what we need and what we've missed. And yeah, it's just I think for me there was a great joy in being able to play together again.
And you guys of course famously got together at Real World Studios, which Get a Gabriel Studio, which is always an experience, I'm sure.
Oh, it's amazing. Again, there's some great footage from that in this EPK that's coming out later. And it's a magical place. We've been there for the last few records, and I did some of my solo album down there, and it's just like anywhere else in the world. It's an amazing studio in a great location, completely bonkers. You know, you're recording and performing in the one room, this giant live control room. But great acoustic, and it really helps focus you, I think, and focuses your creativity. So yeah, I think as long as we can afford to, we'll carry on going back there.
So Steve, there seem to be four themes and another three songs on the album, four suites, let's call them, with themes. But the press release says that the title and the main theme could be interpreted to be one of three things, or two of three things, or all three things. The last hour of a child's playtime before being called inside by his mom, the fight against time in respect of climate change, which is a very wide issue, or the last minutes of a person's life. So without giving it away, what's your filter? What's your personal interpretation?
Yeah, not necessarily the last persons of a person's life, but that feeling of, you know, almost like being in the end days. You know, it's just like when things are at the worst with the pandemic. You know, it transformed our world. You know, I'm used to touring the world. I mean, 2019, I did so many things, and then that 2020, everything stops. You know, it's just like you don't, everything you took for granted in terms of international travel and just interaction with people, all stops. So it did feel like this, like such an abrupt change. So yeah, for me, that's kind of what it represents, that, you know, the last hour before everything goes to hell.
One of the things that I like about the record as well is, while the lyrics are dark, about heavy subject matter, actually musically, I think it's very up tempo, upbeat in
Yes,
times,
yeah, it's just got
and I
a,
like that kind of contrast. Um,
yeah.
you know, where do you guys decide on that in terms of, maybe this is too aggressive for this lyric, or maybe this should be a little faster, slower? How does that work for you guys? Because it really varies from album to album with you guys.
Well, sometimes as you're jamming through the sections, there aren't any lyrics. You're trying to make something work in terms of music. Then as you get maybe fragments of lyrics, you might, you know, get a bit of a picture that Steve's trying to portray, but it's not dictating the direction of the music. The music has to have its own reason for existence, really. And like I say, for me, a lot of what I did on the album was inspired by just that feeling of uh, exuberance of being able to do this again, be able to express these emotions in such a way, and a joy in to be able to, yeah, do something that's been your life's work really again.
Yeah.
I just wanted to congratulate you on The Crow and the Nightingale, particularly. I mean, what a
Yeah,
magnificent song with a wonderful guitar solo. I mean,
yeah. It's my
it
favorite track.
really.
Yeah, it's my
Yes,
favorite track on the album.
mine too. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a yeah, a jewel of a song. And the first time, because the thing is as well, you know, when you're building up the pictures for these tracks, it's only when you get to the very end and the mix stage that you hear the finished thing that you get an idea of its power. Because when we were down at Real World, that was only in conversations with Tim, who films our documentaries and live shows, that he'd worked with this band called Bring Me the Horizon at the Royal Albert Hall, and they'd used this choir, and he said, "Oh, you should check them out." And it was only after that we got them on board, and
That's the
you know,
choir
incredible.
noir.
Yeah, exactly. The incredible job they did on Crow Nightingale, and Care as well. Just kind of elevating it and adding a different kind of level of emotion and energy, which is just, yeah, just insane, really, for me. You know, to listen to our work and to feel moved by it in such a way, it's quite a strange sensation. Uh, but yeah, no, they did an incredible job.
Well, I wondered if I could digress a little bit, Stephen, and ask you a question which is not necessarily related to the album. I'm a huge fan of Marillion, have been since the first album. I'm a great follower of the music, but I'm also a student of the music industry and the music business, and I'm particularly interested in how Marillion have approached the industry. I mean, for example, the Marillion weekends. I mean, it's just one of the many T-shirts that I've collected there. They're a wonderful innovation. You guys basically invented crowdfunding in the music industry, which is really momentous. The couch convention. You've even got a very innovative approach to music piracy, where instead of going after people who try to pirate your music, you give them a link to a user-friendly site where they can access the music. Those types of very innovative approaches to the industry. Would you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we became aware of the power of the internet after the crowdfunding campaign for the '97 tour, where we told our American fan base we couldn't afford to tour the States because every time we came over, we lost $50,000 or $60,000. So one of the American fans had the idea of creating a tour fund, and this was before the World Wide Web. So this was just like a bulletin board called Freaks. And people started raising money to try and enable us to come and tour in the States. I think the biggest single donation was from an English guy, which kind of gave you the sense of like a global community of fans. And anyway, they raised like $70,000, and we did a US tour. And it was after that, when we'd finished our deal with, we had 8 albums with EMI and 3 albums with an independent. We were there looking and trying to decide what we should do. We could sign another deal with the independent, but with every release, we'd seen our sales drop. And we had the idea of sending it direct to our fan base, going to them and saying, would you be willing to pre-order this album? You're not going to get it for a year, but would you be interested? And I think 14,000 of them said yes. So that enabled us to bring in Dave Meegan again as a producer, make the Anorectophobia album, license it back to EMI, and for the first time kind of turn a corner in terms of sales and profile, and set the blueprint for, not too much to say, for the survival of certain artists within the industry, finding a different way of doing it rather than going cap in hand to a record label and signing your life away and getting peanuts in terms of royalties. We owned the record. We could do what we wanted with it, and we kind of followed that model really ever since then. We work with Adel in Germany, who do a great job in the promotion and distribution of the music, and combination of the pre-order campaigns for each albums and the Marillion weekends are the two probably most important things in terms of financing the band and enabling us to make music at this level. Because when you're making a record, it takes time, which equates to money, because everyone has to live. So if you have the budget, which is probably triple the budget you would get from even from a major label, you can take your time to craft your music to its best possible conclusion. Really.
It's a remarkable story, really, the success of the band in the last 10, 15 years with all of that. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. I think in some ways we're kind of as well known for crowdfunding and the use of the internet as we are for the music, which is ironic in a way. But
yeah. Well, ironically,
one of the next album can be about the music industry.
Yes,
it'll do full circle.
Be real dark. Well, ironically, with that said, you have been going back and releasing reissues of early records, and that's been going really well and getting praise for the improvements sonically that you're able to do and all the things you can add to them, and people certainly love those things. Talk about what that's been like, revisiting the old records so in depth and working on them in that way.
It's been very interesting, actually. We've worked with some incredibly talented people, Annie and Avril, that have done a lot of the Fish Year releases, and and it's not just remixing the albums; it's finding the live performances from that time and mixing those. So it becomes like very much like a historical document of that time in the band's career. Yeah. So I think it's, for anyone that's a real fan, it's or a completist, it's just, that's the version of the album that you would want in an ideal world. I'm the same with some films. I think I've got about 5 different versions of Blade Runner, director's cuts and Blu-rays, and Right. But I think people want the ultimate version of their favorite records, if at all possible. So it's great that we can do that. We've got Holidays Neen that's going to come out, I think, later this year, which sounds phenomenal. It sounds so much better than the original release to me, so much more powerful and dynamic. So it's quite exciting to go back and revisit those records and in a way improve them.
Yeah, I mean, technology nowadays allows you to do so many different things studio wise to improve the sound of a record that I imagine. I mean, when you were recording those records back in the 80s, did you feel like you were unhappy with the sound, or for that period it was good?
I was unhappy with my guitar sound on a lot of the first two albums. The early 80s, there was a fashion for very harsh sounds, both in terms of guitars and drum sounds as well, very over EQ'd. But I think Andy did a great job of trying to bring back some of that warmth on the Fugazi reissues. But there's a limit to how much you can do. But yeah, in a way, they're just a product of their time.
Yeah, indeed.
So, Steve, you guys are famous for choosing not to be pigeonholed into any category of music. Would it be fair to say that the word prog doesn't even adequately describe who you are today? I mean, there's such a variation when you look back at albums like Misplaced Childhood and Clutching at Straws.
Yeah, it's difficult to see because prog can mean so many different things to different people. I'm actually lecturing at the second International Conference of Progressive Rock in Alicante in Spain next week.
There's such a thing? That's cool.
yeah. At the big classical music conservatoire there. But see, for me, what progressive rock means is just music that doesn't have to conform. It doesn't have to conform to a traditional structure. It can blend multiple influences and create some kind of different hybrids of styles. It's not necessarily commercial, but it can be commercial. It's not a box. It shouldn't be a box that you put things in. It shouldn't be a big stick that you hit people on the head with. But by the same token, it shouldn't just represent bands that sound like they've been locked in their bedrooms the last 30 years just listening to Supper's Ready or Shine On You Crazy Diamond. There's a whole world out there. So for me, progressive rock in its true sense is music that's adventurous, that doesn't have to conform, but can include virtually anything in terms of stylistic kind of content.
Well, speaking of David Gilmour, he's been cited as one of your influences, and I think it's fair to say that you and Gilmour are at the top of the heap of guitarists that play in that particular style. You're the two guys. Would that be fair to say? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of discovered music when I was 15. I decided when I was still at school that that's what I wanted to do with my life. So kind of certain subjects of school I was okay at, maths and physics and English and art, but generally I wasn't really interested. So I left school at 16 and played the guitar for 10 hours a day. I remember listening to Shine On You Crazy Diamond when Wish You Were Here first came out on a cassette player on the beach at night under the stars and thinking, this is what I want to do with my life. There could be nothing better in the universe than to do this. And so that was my dream, I joined my first band at 17. They all went off to college and university, and I joined Marillion when I was 19 and followed my dream. And when I think back, I was incredibly young to be doing that, but it worked out eventually. Within 3 years, we were signed to EMI and recording. So, but no, it's very odd when you kind of look back and. Getting in a band that gets signed is like winning the lottery. Getting to have a career that lasts this long is like winning the lottery twice. So it's a very strange feeling. Literally a lifetime. 43 years since I joined. It's so yeah. But to go back, Gilmour is probably my three main influences are Dave Gilmour, Andy Latimer from Camel, and Steve Hackett. And Steve Hackett's actually a really good friend of mine, and we've been doing some work over the years, and at some point in the future we'll release an album together.
That's exciting.
Wow.
Any plans for the Steve Rothery band to do anything, tour again, or?
Yeah, I just released this Blu-ray from the Live in London, the Steve Rothery band, which is going down incredibly well. But that's only available direct from the Racket Club website. But we've got 3 shows over the Easter weekend in Europe, 2 in the Netherlands and 1 in Germany, and I'll probably try and do a couple in the UK in the summer, probably late July. And we will do I'll do another album with those guys as well. I'm still finishing off my space-themed instrumental album called Round Toulay. And I'm also doing some work with Thorsten from Tangerine Dream, who I'm guesting with next month in London, well, for 3 shows around the UK. So I've always got a few things happening. I've always got a few plates spinning. So I keep myself busy. Drives my wife crazy. But,
well, again, I think this has been a pleasure to speak with you. Again, the new album, An Hour Before It's Dark, comes out on March 4th from Marillion. An incredible band that's been doing it for 40 some odd years, which is unbelievable. We hope to see you on Cruise to the Edge. I don't know if you familiar, but I'm one of the co-hosts with John
excellent.
Kirkman on the ship.
Oh, great.
And,
okay,
so hopefully we'll be able to see you there and get to talk in person for a bit. And Nick, are you coming?
I'm not sure yet, Roy. But I'm hoping to, put it that way.
Nick's never missed the cruise.
I've never missed one yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing my best. It's a long way from here, though.
Yeah, I completely understand.
All right. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Be well.
Cheers. Good to speak to you guys.
You too. Bye.
Bye, Steve.
Thanks. Bye.